Goody, tell me this, and I don't think we've ever spoken about this. Maybe we probably have. Owen Farrell, good friend of mine, good friend of the show. What's the hate around him in the media, like of him not being in the squad? It might have been me. Did I start it or not?
But, well, let's start this off with what. Let's start this off with what's the hate in the media, Jim. Every time you talk about him, you say like, he thought I don't like him because he thought I was shit and all this stuff. So there's no listen. I don't know. The big question around Owen Farrell, he hasn't played since the November internationals. There's obviously always question marks, and you go back to last year's Six Nations around Eddie Jones and picking a lot of the Saracens boys that hadn't played at all. He's the only one that has been kind of granted not special dispensation, but he's in the squad without being picked on form or fitness. So Sam Underhill, who unfortunately got injured again at the weekend, but he's out the squad because Eddie Jones doesn't think he's fit. He's had a few head knocks and all this stuff, so wants him to get some game time under his belt. Elliot Daly, same thing. He's come back from injury. He said he's best off at playing for Saracens for a few games to get some fitness and come back. And I did a column for Rugby Pod saying that how great the squad was from Eddie Jones in terms of he's picking on pure form, apart from Owen Farrell. And Orlando Bailey is the other one, obviously, with George Ford being out, but he's now back in because Owen Farrell's out. So when it's your captain and your lead and you've been out injured, there's going to be questions, isn't there, around Owen Farrell? And Eddie Jones has said, listen, I'm picking him because he's our captain, he's our leader, he's the energy he brings to the side in terms of winning mentality and everything around the training week and obviously the leadership on the field. He's integral to Eddie Jones. So I don't really get it, but I do blame you, Jim. It started with you when you said you don't like him because he said you're shit, and he doesn't like you because you are shit.
It could well have done, and for the influencer person that I am, I'm not going to apologise for it. But I look at all the other captains, and again, I've only had a snapshot of some of the media stuff, obviously on social media, and you take that as the rule of thumb, don't you, these days? But Alan Wynne-Jones, a guy that I've buried.
Questioned as well.
Yeah, I questioned him, but everyone else backed him in the media, and he obviously rocked up and they won the Six Nations. Johnny Sexton, same thing.
You've questioned him as well, James.
Of course I have. So it shows you I've not questioned Faz though in terms of like him being in the squad all the team, but everyone else in England seems to be. But what I'm saying is,
have you questioned him?
Well, I might have done. Yeah, I might have done. But I just find it a little bit weird that every other kind of tier one nation or big team, like Scotland, for example. Like if Hoggy's slightly, tier one, Six Nations champions, you heard it here first. But every other captain, like of years gone by, Richie McCaw, I suppose Sam Kane got questioned a bit. Hoops, sound like I'm best mates with him. Like Michael Hooper, Sexton, Alan Wynne-Jones. There's not many people questioning. But like the Autumn Nations Cup when Faz got injured and then Courtney was captain and everything coming out of camp was like, oh, it's a much happier place. Like, I just find it very. I know that's what I read.
Into people's mouths.
That's what I read. Or it seems I don't really know. I just don't understand why there is this narrative around trying to push Faz out. He's the captain, so it's like any other captain. It'd be like, mate, like Jono, for example. You're in. Like, regardless if you've got one leg. I'm not saying that Faz is Jono, but there just seems to be an underlying thing, doesn't there, about him? But anyway, he's injured. He's seemingly injured his other ankle, and the what you're hearing coming out of Saracens, it doesn't sound good for him. So we do wish him a speedy recovery, but obviously Ford's back in. And again, something we've not ever said, Andrew. I don't know if you agree with me. Bloody deserves it. He deserves to be back in the squad. So It's just weird how it all works, isn't it? But there we go. # England.
What do you make of Orlando Bailey's inclusion ahead of Ford originally?
Very bizarre, très bizarre. But then again, he did it in the autumn, didn't he? With Jamie George. Left him out in the first squad, put some inexperienced players ahead of him, and then obviously Luke Cowan-Dickie got injured, so he brought Jamie George back in. Jamie George ends up starting against Australia and then doing his knee in. So, I mean, it's a surprise. You cannot question George Ford's form at all for Leicester. He has been one of the players of the season. Yeah, I'd say the only better player than him in the Premiership this year in terms of impact on his team and performance week in, week out, is probably Marcus Smith, who's playing the same position as him. So I'd have picked George Ford and Marcus Smith in the squad with Farrell there as well, because it's an expanded squad. If you think back to Six Nations last year, he can only have a 28-man squad. So it was obviously reduced numbers. That's when you have to look at players that can cover different positions. And you could argue that certain players, wouldn't get in because of that reason. But the Orlando Bailey one, and I think he's an exciting youngster who's got a big future. The only thing I did question was when Owen Farrell there and Marcus Smith as your 10 options, if you've got George Ford there as well, would Marcus Smith be just looking over his shoulder? And you want Marcus Smith to be given the reins to go out and run the attack as he does for Quins and be the real leader from that point of view. And, having George Ford there and Owen Farrell, does that undermine him? I don't know. You can only get into the mind of Eddie Jones, can't you? And when you look at the selection, and everyone brings up the Vunipolas, you're looking at the two Vunipola boys, Billy and Mako. They ain't even top two in terms of their form at the minute, are they? If we're being brutally honest. So at Luso prop, Mako Vunipola is behind Ellis Genge and Joe Marler, without a shadow of a doubt. Billy Vunipola is behind Alex Dombrandt and Sam Simmons, without a shadow of a doubt in terms of form. So that doesn't then become a question. The question comes to Eddie Jones when George Ford is tearing up trees as he was, and he still didn't pick him. But it's all sort of water under the bridge now because George is back in the squad, and obviously Farrell's out, and we wish him all the best. But it's Marcus Smith's time, and George Ford's got to try and put pressure on him to get back in the team, hopefully.
Any other surprises in there?
Surprised about a comment that I read. I keep going on stuff that I read. Andrew, again, Tom Curry.
Yeah.
Very, very good player. World class, would you say?
In some facets, he certainly is world class. He does give a lot of penalties away, but that is the nature of a 7 that is living on the edge, competing all the time. But then again, he plays at number 8 for Eddie Jones. And the interesting thing, and selection-wise, when you're talking about the balance of the back row, and I mentioned it earlier, Underhill's not in the squad. So for me, Curry's shifting back to 7 because Underhill's not in there. And now we're looking at who's going to play number 8. And both of them had pretty big games at the weekend, didn't they, for their clubs, both getting hat-tricks in Dombrandt and Simmons. So is Curry world-class? I think he certainly is in many facets of the game. But, yeah, I mean...
The reason I asked that,
is
because, again, Eddie Jones is talking about him or has talked about him like Richie McCaw or being as good as him. And I think that is a ridiculous statement. We're talking about the go-out of go-outs in Richie McCaw. And I'm quite happy to put it out there. And albeit I haven't seen enough of their matches this season because I haven't seen a load of Sale. I've seen a bit of Sale and I've seen a bit of Bath and they've been poor. But I'll say it, mate. And I know he's injured. I think Sam Underhill was better. I do.
Yeah. I mean, you can get that argument. I think Curry's better ball in hand, which is why he's perhaps shifted to 8. But he'll be back at 7 now. So, yeah, I mean, Sam Underhill's got issues with concussion again. He got knocked out, sparked out at the weekend in his first game back.
Big one as well.
So he definitely needs a decent chunk of time away from playing. And that's unfortunately going to swallow up most of the Six Nations, I should imagine, to make sure that they're doing the right thing by Sam and looking after him, because the amount of concussions he's had over the last couple of years, you've got to be very careful with that. So it's kind of a question. We'll judge Tom Curry in the Six Nations as an open side when he's going to be an out-and-out open side, hopefully, and Eddie Jones isn't going to play him at 8 because that'll be either Simmons or Dombrandt.